What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Next Level YouTube channel. Today we're talking about my mod sleds I built for 2020. A turbo, a Carl's 900, and an SLP twin pipe. Let's break it down. All right, so we're close to the end of the year, and now that I've got to put some miles on all three of the builds that we put together this season, and before I get started, I got to thank my guys. I'm always talking about my builds and that this is what I built. My crew here at Next Level, these guys are unbelievable. And there's actually a lot of people within the industry that I have to thank too in terms of their help with building these snowmobiles. But nevertheless, we've put some time into each one of these, and there's some unique differences. And I want you guys to understand that I'm not showcasing like, here are these, like, there's a lot of money invested into all of these things. I don't want this to be a video that's about, hey, look at me and I've got all these fancy toys. The idea behind this video was talking about the characteristics of each one of them as you guys look ahead at what your interests are. And so we'll talk about the turbo. We'll talk about the BoonDocker Turbo. This is the brand new agility kit for 2020. It's got a new deep snow exhaust that goes right out the factory hole, which is very handy in terms of the install. It's quiet, which is really, really nice. The agility kit is very drivable, very much so like the Sidekick from back in like the 16 through 18 series, where it was basically a pull the rope and go once you did get it tuned. This is a controllable BoonDocker control box. And you can see up here, guys, the new BoonDocker venting up here in the airbox has been really, really good. Very drivable sled. We're not waiting on a bunch of lag. The sled is just, right there, very crisp throttle response, very fast, well up over 200 horse. So out of my builds, this was the big powered sled. I run straight 100 low lead, so you're having to run avgas. I don't run ahead on this. And the thing has been flawless. It's been, like I said, it's been a very predictable snowmobile, and turbos a lot of times can be kind of wily. They're kind of all over the place, and for you to be confident on a turbo sled, it's got to run. It's got to have that power. You've got to have that throttle response and agility kit. BoonDocker just nailed it with this thing. So this thing as a 2020 Polaris 850 163 2.6. It's a belt-driven snowmobile, lightweight Zollinger rotating mass kit throughout. In fact, all three of these sleds have that. Firm believer in the lightweight rotating mass kits from ZRP. In terms of its clutching, running the BoonDocker weights, it's pretty crazy to think, guys, that a stock Polaris 850, depending on your elevation, you'll run like a 68 gram weight. This is running a new BoonDocker weight, and total number there is I'm running about a 75 gram weight, and this thing will run 8,700 RPM. So it is a low flying plane, and anybody that has a turbo would attest to the type of riding that is available to you when you're riding a turbo sled. Deep snow, the ability to go up, the ability to do all kinds of craziness. You're seeing from my Instagram and everybody else's that are out there, the types of maneuvers that guys are able to do on a turbo sled. It's pretty amazing. It's almost a different sport. And it's really fun to say that. And it's fun to be at a level of your riding where you are that confident and that anticipated of a rider that, being able to harness this type of power, it just creates, like I'd said before, a bunch more opportunity. All right, so some more details about the turbo sled, guys. You can see I'm running the Fox. These are the Chris Brant Edition IQS shocks. So Brant valved IQS. Remember, that's an intelligent quick switch. Man, what an amazing shock setup for a turbo sled. So anything with some big power, and we're still getting advantages there on a stock sled, but with a lot of horsepower, having that ability to go through those three different dampening profiles, and then the big one, having that lockout mode for the rear suspension. You're climbing up a hill and you're 200 horse and you want to keep that front end down, it's really handy to be able to have those profiles right at your thumb, right at basically your fingertips. And so suspension would be a key to big horsepower. All too often I see people, they add a turbo to their sled and they don't make suspension modifications, and they wonder why the sled is a bit out of control. Remember, just like with a vehicle, you add a bunch of power to it, you got to work on the handling of that. And then to my point with riding a turbo, if you're already struggling as a rider, you're already having difficulty side hilling and just really getting the basics down, adding a bunch of power to your snowmobile, that's not really helping, right? In fact, a bunch of power, turbo power, can bring out a lot of weaknesses in your riding. We talk about being an anticipated rider. Well, if you're not there yet, remember, adding more power to that, it's not gonna help. You know, when a race car driver goes around a racetrack and his lap times are horrible, the crew chief doesn't look at the rest of his guys and say, hey, we should add more power to it. You know, they're gonna work on the handling of the vehicle, and that's what we'd wanna do here. So suspension would be a big one. I'm very big on keeping the low handlebars. All of my handlebars are cut down. I cut an inch off of either side of the Polaris black bar, so that's the 5-inch bar. I cut them down, so now I'm 2 inches narrower with the low handlebar setup. And then everything else about the sled in terms of, you know, this sled's got the stocked React front end on it. I run it in the center. That's about a 37-inch ski stance. I do that even with my aftermarket front ends that we'll talk about on these other builds. Helium hood, a lot of Skins next level stuff on here. The helium hood, the Skins next level front and rear bumpers. We've got the Sled Solutions QL handlebar bag. Still really like this bag in terms of just ability to put the gear where you can put storage with the access panel. The next level windshield bag here. I've got the new magnet tether from Detrimental Concepts. These have been really, really good. This has the new 9.5 gallon aluminum tank from Skins that has the separate, takes a little over a quart of oil, but you get rid of the oil system altogether, so you don't have the oil jug over the clutch cover. The nice low seat. All of this, guys, is some pretty big weight savings. We're just not running as much fuel. I've got my next level storage bag on the back here. We've got the Skins Tri-Lite running boards. This one's got a stock rear suspension, but still has the IQS shock package in there. All right, so we've covered the 163 Turbo. Now we're moving on to my lightweight build. So this is a 163 2.6 that we cut down. We used the Mountain Tech tunnel cut setup, which worked really, really well. We cut 7 inches off of this tunnel and kept it as a 163. So this is the SLP, the Starting Line Products twin pipe snowmobile. I named it the Outlaw, and because of the Outlaw twins. You have some weight savings with the twin pipes. Everybody loves and knows what I'm talking about in terms of that twin pipe sound, and this thing is just so much dang fun to ride. In part because of the horsepower gain, so somewhere around that 17 to 20 horsepower range in terms of gain by putting the twin pipes on. And while we're talking about this stuff in terms of some budget, right? So an Agility Turbo kit, somewhere around the $5,500 complete, you know, with a control box and installation, things like that. I mean, it's big power. So there's some money involved in that. The twin pipe sled, you know, less than half of that, right? $2,400, depending on the setup, the venting, the torque arm, the SLP head, which adds a little bit more power, especially in that mid-range. And so this sled has literally everything that SLP has made for the 850. The torque arm, the venting, the clutching, the twin pipes, obviously, and what an amazing snowmobile. And so beyond the twin pipes, the helium hood, a lot of the same stuff as you guys have seen from my builds, the helium hood, the next level front and rear bumper. As we move back on the sled, this one has the aluminum 8.3 gallon tank. This is a Cole Wilfred signature tank with a Chris Brant frameless seat. And together, guys, just in the seat and tank, we're looking at 20 to 22 pounds weight savings just right here. And what's so unique about that as you ride it is just that midship feeling of, you know, that fuel not sloshing around, and that weight saving is so considerable, man. You'll feel it the moment that you fire up the sled. Next level storage bag, all custom colored. We've got some Tri-Lite running boards, and then back here on the next level rear bumper. And then this sled, guys, another part of the weight savings here is the Next Tech carbon skid. So this is a 163 with the Chaos profile. And then again, we're running Fox QS3, so not the electronic version, but again, the Brant valved QS3 suspension all the way around. So Zollinger Racing, we've got all of that. We've got the lightweight flywheel. We've got the lightweight clutch cover. We've got the lightweight brake rotor. We've got a couple of trick parts here with the throttle block. A lot of cool things that I think look, you know, and can seem there's a lot of bling to the whole thing. We got the Skins free flow front end that's all aluminum. You guys remember that there's a lot of things that we're doing here that I get it that the looks are there. Like we build some pretty cool looking sleds, but the function of these sleds, once you start pulling about 50 pounds of weight out of a snowmobile, again, it becomes a different sport. I'd say it all the time that, you know, the idea behind learning how to be a better rider is learning those fundamentals so that we can make riding easier. Well, ride with 50 pounds less onto you or the sled, and riding becomes easier. So a naturally aspirated build versus a turbo sled. You know, as I just said, you know, nothing beats turbo power but turbo power. So you've got a sled that's running 5 pounds of boost, a sled that's running 10 pounds of boost, yeah, it's got more power. A twin pipe sled, it's very responsive. I love the low end power of these sleds. And then the other part of this too, in terms of getting that power to the snow, is the Kurtz gear down kit. So all 3 of my builds this year are running that Kurtz gear down kit, and it changes that final drive to that 2.37 ratio that's been working really, really well. As a tree rider, you know, I ride in a bunch of different terrain, a bunch of different environment, a bunch of different snow. I'm riding as a job, I'm riding all the time. It's so important to have that low end power. And so a naturally aspirated sled, it's so consistent, it's so rippy, everything about this thing in terms of getting up on top of the snow, you pair that with being such a lightweight sled and the capabilities are pretty endless. It's so fun to build sleds where, you know, the sled isn't the limiting factor, it's me. All right, lastly guys, we gotta talk about old Incog 900. So this is a Polaris 850, 155 cut tunnel. We cut 5 inches out of this tunnel using the Mountain Tech kit. And we got to talk about the cut tunnels. Cut tunnel is, again, about opportunity. We're seeing and hearing everybody, it seems like it's all the rage about cutting the tunnels. And there are some advantages there. You know, the idea that the tunnel itself, the way it's designed, can act as a wheelie bar. Remember that the snow flap is doing just as much in terms of holding the sled back, whether you're trying to go up and over backwards, you're trying to do a quick, tight turn in the trees, especially on a steep incline, something like that. The cut tunnel has been a lot of fun, but it's also something that you've got to be very, very ready for. We were talking about being an anticipated rider, talking about how all these power upgrades, they certainly can work against you if you are not prepared as a rider, you know, to be willing to anticipate these things happening that much faster, right? Once you start, and I say this all the time, once you start seeing the wings on the fly and you can prepare yourself for this type of opportunity, it becomes really, really fun. Is it something as a new rider that you rush out and add a bunch of power and do all these things too? And that's going to be personal preference. The reason I built a 55 and wanted to build sort of 3 uniquely different mod sleds is, you know, when the snow changes and we get into more of that spring snow, a 155 is a lot of fun. Very maneuverable. You guys just saw, you know, we just did the how to do a hop over video with this 900, and I was laughing about how it was actually difficult to do a hop over. I've been doing so many bow ties and so many re-entries on this sled throughout the season that literally having to sort of shut the sled down early to get the thing to just redirect and do a transition. A lot of that is because of the power upgrades. A lot of that is just the idea or the design of the snowmobile. So real quick, you know, same kind of stuff, guys. Helium hood, next level front and rear, 8.3 lightweight tank, shedding a bunch of weight there. Next Tech carbon skid is a 155. Again, chaos profile, so, you know, a tipped up rail design, giving it a lot of front end lift. We've got the Fox Brant Edition QS3 shocks, low handlebars, cut down, the QL bags here. Lots of storage throughout the sled. Zollinger lightweight package once again. But really, guys, the idea here, and we're going over, and there's a lot of this stuff that's just regurgitated from one sled to the next, but ideally for me it was, you know, deciding on the type of day that I was going to have, the terrain that I was going to be in, what it is that I ultimately wanted out of the snowmobile for that day. So, you know, if you're looking in your golf bag, I've got 3 unique clubs that are in there, and it's finding what the best club for what it is that I'm going to go do is going to be. And so, you know, on a spring day, the Carl's 155, tons of power. It's a shorter snowmobile, especially with the cut tunnel. A lot of fun to go do a bunch of dance moves. You know, if it was a really deep, really big day, you know, running on the Agility Turbo 163, this thing is going to be absolutely amazing, and maybe the better club suited for that type of terrain or that type of day. And then the twin pipe sled is that mix of in between. Very lightweight sled, plenty of additional horsepower, and man, what a fun snowmobile is a 163. Not nearly as sort of all over the place and kind of wily as this thing. So a bit more planet of a snowmobile, but still super fun and still lost a ton of weight in the process. All right, so, you know, as we finish up, guys, you know, with the Carl Cycle sled, we're talking about costs of things. We've talked about the agility kit being somewhere in that, you know, a little over $5 grand. The SOP twin pipe were $2,400 and some change. You guys get it, that the sky's the limit with a lot of this. Carl cycle kit for his big bore, very similar, around that $2,400 range. You know, I'm sure that there'll be a bunch of questions and comments about these sleds and how they differ. We'll put in the description below just a build list of each one of these sleds, and we'll try to put some costs associated with that so you guys can see, you know, you've got big money into the turbo kit, but you have to remember with the lightweight builds, you know, the money invested into the carbon titanium. And so these builds, to be honest with you, become very similar in terms of, you know, what we're putting into these things. So, you know, do you want big power? Do you want lightweight? Do you want both? And the sky's the limit, but building that snowmobile that's necessary for you. And in closing, guys, think about this. When you're getting ready to build a sled and you know you're gonna go well past, you know, mountain stock, which is some clutching and a lightweight can, and you're gonna really start to look at the snowmobile, the improvements that you make, you just have to understand like what it is that you ultimately want out of the sled. You know, does it do you a whole lot of good as a rider that is, you know, still kind of struggling with the basics? And I would just be thinking about that in terms of, you know, the snowmobile that you're about to build. And remember, let's concentrate on the handling of the snowmobile. Get that dialed. Get your bars, get your suspension, get your ski stance, get the right track length. Getting that suspension dialed for your body weight and your riding style. Those are the things that I'm going to focus on prior to adding a whole bunch of power. Once you start getting all of that together and you start building power, hopefully this video is helpful in terms of staying naturally aspirated, going into a turbo, and all things in between. So we appreciate all that you do. You guys remember to subscribe to the Next Level channel. We have had so much success this year. I really thank you for that, and we'll see you next time.